Welcome back to another 3 for 3, where I ask three questions in 3 minutes. And today I've got with me someone from all the way across the other side of the world. Welcome, Jess.
Hello, hello. Thanks for
Hello.
having me on the show.
Thank you. And thank you so much for joining me. I actually don't know what we're going to call this topic, so I'll let the questions speak for itself, and we'll jump straight into it. Firstly, I just want to kind of get to know, what do you think is missing from traditional change management training programs?
Well, thank you for asking that question. And a little bit of context here, too, so people understand why I'm explaining this the way that I am. I was trained in change management over a decade ago. I now teach change management at the university level. I've gone through multiple programs myself. And so when I say that I believe this is missing, it's based on my direct experience and also just from observation. But what is typically missing from many change management training programs there's a couple of things. One is the emphasis on leadership development and really coupling that with the process and the theory and the tools is taking a look at who you are as a person and how you show up in the workplace. That is really critical. You can know so much about change management theory, but if you don't have great leadership skills, then it's not going to get you very far. And then with that, there's not many programs that are focusing on ethics. I don't see that in any programs and not in many
Yeah.
leadership development programs either. I think this concept of ethics it's not new. It's in fact very, very old. There's Stoicism if you're thinking about philosophy and ethics, but there's also professional ethics. But somewhere along the way, over the past at least 2 decades that I've been working, the conversation around ethics as a component of being a leader of people change projects, it's sort of lost, it's gone by the wayside, and I like to see it come back.
And it's a good point you raised there. So why do you think it matters so much when it comes to things like, strategic decision making or, organizational change?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to ethics, I see it as being a compass or like guardrails for the leader. And so
Yeah.
how I think about it is just because you can do something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And when you're in an organization, you're thinking about strategy and innovation and growth and competitive advantage. Yes, those are things that in any organization, any business leader needs to be thinking about. But ethics brings a certain filter and rigor to the conversation
Yeah.
where, if you're going to be implementing a change, are you thinking about the broader implications and how are you thinking about, does it protect employees, clients, customers, the public? So it brings in a different lens from which to view decision making, and that'll have a direct impact on the changes a company decides to make, when and how.
Yeah. No, you're definitely right with that. And I like that you brought this concept out and really highlighted it. It's definitely something I also, I see that's missing. So
Yeah.
if I was to go to my last question, you talked about change leadership is very important. So what power skills do you recommend change leaders prioritize developing and why?
Yes. So I think about this as the 4 C's. It's an acronym. And I'm also going to assume that anyone, developing these skills has a foundation, a moral compass that is guiding them. So that self-leadership piece, check the box there. But these are the 4 skills that have really risen to like they're ones that I see being more effective for people to develop than any of the other power skills. And so the first is connection. And really what that means is your ability to build relationships, authentic relationships with the individuals in your workplace, with your clients. So it's connection, like building that rapport that's going to help you as a leader. Communication, that's pretty straightforward, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, many leaders, many organizations struggle with communication. So it's clear communication. It's for an individual, it's actively listening. That's another part of communication that we're often missing in the workplace. People aren't really listening to each other as much as they are trying to communicate through talking
Yeah.
or written word. And then another piece of communication is so I took a page from Thich Nhat Hanh, he talks about loving speech. And so having kindness in the words that you're using. And so the filters you could use would be, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? So active listening, loving speech, clear communication, that is a skill that anybody it's a great skill outside of the workplace too. Let's be real.
Oh, definitely.
That's a good skill to
Definitely.
develop. The third one is collaboration. So how well do you work with others? How do you share information? Are you partnering? Are you figuring out how to move forward together? I think in many companies, there's obviously this exists. It's organizational silos. So there's, how we think about resources, how we think about sharing knowledge. If there isn't good collaboration amongst individuals and teams, then as a leader, you're going to struggle to implement change at any scale. And then the last one is compassion, and that might feel woo, but it's meant to be a gut check for leaders. Are you treating yourself with compassion? I have coached so many leaders who feel like they aren't doing things well, or they aren't enough as a leader. So just realizing we're human, and then the people you're working with, they're human too, and caring about them beyond the contributions that they're making in the workplace. And so if you have those skills, right, those 4 power skills, and you're thinking about, how do I develop these? How do I continue to nurture and cultivate these skills within myself? You will see your level of leadership and influence transform. And you'll also likely feel it in here too. It's going to feel good to be someone who builds relationships, has that community, effectively communicates, works well with others, and then, has a little bit of grace through that compassion piece. So those are the 4 power skills that I would recommend.
That is brilliant, Jess. I love how you really tied that in. And look, the 2 things that I picked up from that definitely is the communication piece, but compassion, when you talked about it, yes, obviously for your other people, but firstly, most importantly, for yourself as a change agent, reminding yourself that you are human. I really appreciate that, Jess, and thank you again so much for joining me on this
You're
chat.
so welcome. Thank you again for having me on.
That's all good. And for everyone listening out there, as always, I encourage you to connect with Jess, connect with myself, and put any of your questions or comments below. Thank you again, Jess. See you later.